So originally I was gonna do the small stout box and like all the cards and map tiles and tokens for the entire game fit in this box, but just barely, super packed, super cramped. And the rule book was gonna be like super tiny. It was gonna be pretty hard to cram all the information into this very small pocket-sized rule book. So the consensus on my channel with all the feedback I got was that the small stout box is just too small, which I totally agree with. And then I built this larger medium stout box that Game Crafter offers. And the advantage to this is that there's plenty of room. In fact, I would argue that there's almost too much room. It's pretty cavernous in there. But the main benefit is that it could fit as a larger rule book into this box. And then I was reading the fine print on the actual size of the rule book, and it's smaller than half letter. It's actually 5 by 8 instead of 5.5 by 8.5. So it's quite a bit smaller. So it's going to be tighter and more constrained than this one was. This now just feels ginormous. I probably won't continue building my rule book at the letter size format. I think I'm going to go with at least half letter or smaller. But the biggest problem I'm hitting is the max size for this rule book from Game Crafter is 20 pages. If I go saddle stitched, if I go perfect bound, I can go thicker, but I'm not sure I want a perfect bound rule book. Perfect bound books, especially small ones, you know, they don't stay open. This is a big book, so it stays open better, but there's like kind of a deep center fold on perfect bound books. Not great for rule books. I kind of want to go with saddle stitch for rule books. So then I was researching other options, just trying to come up with anything I could. And then I found the old Pro boxes on Game Crafter. So I mocked up the size of the medium Pro box. The Pro box is smaller than the stout box, and it's going to use a thinner substrate. It's actually going to use this thin chipboard, I think. I just mocked it up with Bristol board. It's just, this rule book's a little too wide to fit in the tall Pro box, but they have this, what they call the tall rule book, which is 4.5 by 8 inches, and that's the rule book you're supposed to use for the tall Pro box. Now, what I like about this design is that everything does fit. There's actually plenty of space left over. You could build a storage solution inside this box for all the chits. There's plenty of wiggle room for the cards. Not really room for expansions, but room for this core set to really breathe. Especially if I want to include standees and more dice. Definitely enough room for that. The rule book is thinner. It's about the same height as the stout box rule book, but it's thinner. So I think it's too thin to do double columns. So I think with the tall box rule book, I would have to go with like 1 column. But to be honest with you, I kind of think it's appealing. With this book, even though it's saddle stitched, I can go up to 40 pages. That's one thing I don't understand about Game Crafter is one saddle stitched book has a maximum of 20 pages. Another saddle stitched book has a maximum of 40 pages. You know, I don't quite understand. I emailed Game Crafter to try to get to the bottom of it and asked if they could do a 40-page saddle stitched rule book this size. I'm like, nope. Like, there's really no wiggle room. Like, you get what they offer, period, and no explanation. So, you know, it just comes down to like, is this skinnier format better or worse than this double column format? So now I'm just taking a box template from Game Crafter. It's not called the tall Pro box, it's called the medium Pro box, but it uses the tall rule book. And I'm just printing out the template. So this way, if I want to build a box out of chipboard, I have a nice little template here that I can use to measure from. And also, if I want to start working on box art, I now have a Photoshop template that I can use for mocking up the art for the sides of the box and the top of the box and then the bottom of the box. So I think I'm gonna do it. I think I'm gonna build a box, a medium pro box, because I really just kind of want to see how this plays out and how it compares. And then we're gonna score. Now I think technically you would want to carve like a V score and then fold it inward so that you don't have this like ridged corner. But I'm not really at that level yet with my box building. Maybe the next time I build a box, I'll try to do that. I've tried it before and it never works. So I'm studying this Car Wars box because this is essentially what I'm trying to build here. And I feel a tiny little bump that goes all the way here and here. I think they are using tape. The water activated adhesive on all four corners. Because I was wondering if they just are using this printed material to keep the box together. But I think they're using tape too. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna use tape. One thing I didn't notice is that the price tag for this chipboard happens to be on this piece that I'm building, which kind of sucks because now this box that I built has this battle scar from the price tag. But I can wrap the inside, whatever, I don't care. Actually, this template has a fold over that folds over and covers this. So this will be covered by the printed art work. I'm just gonna see if I can get a nice clean build this time. And then I'm just gonna fold these. This is the corner tape. It's gonna hold the box corners together. All right, so now we're just using our water activated adhesive. And we just load up the sticky side with water. I've been thinking a lot about what I want the box art to look like, and there's a couple different directions I can go. I can do sort of an iconic, like this is a spell book, or this box looks like a relic. You know, with like maybe just a big sigil on it or some runes, or I can do something more illustrative and have like an action scene, you know, go with more like a Fantasy Flight kind of vibe, or like a Shadows of Brimstone kind of vibe, where I'm depicting what the game world is like and what the characters in that world are like. I love old packaging from the 80s, like toy packaging. Those old gouache paintings, like this stuff, these old action figures. I mean, these paintings are beautiful. The article in here explains how this artist painted this, and he spent hours and hours and hours on it, like I think 20 hours or more, just getting that painting right. And there's something kind of beautiful about these old packaging illustrations. So I've got some gouache. I've always wanted to play around with learning how to paint gouache paintings like that. It'd be kind of cool to do just like some big old battle scene on the front, like kind of in this old style. But we'll see. I think there has to be a balance, you know, between the cover art and the art style that I've used for the rest of the game. So there needs to be some sort of synergy between those two styles. So this is the bottom, and I'm gonna go ahead and build the top exactly the same way. The only difference between the top and the bottom is that the top dimensions are slightly bigger so that it'll slide over the bottom. All right, so this box shaped up better than my first attempt with the stout box. I just used slightly more precise measuring and taping. And I think I could even, next time I think I could even like take it up a notch. It's still a little rough around the edges. But this is the size difference between like the stout box and this medium pro box. Now, I think what I want to do, I kind of want to experiment with wrapping a printed sheet around the box just to see what that looks like. I can imagine about 10 things that are going to go wrong when I try to adhere this. But this is an interesting way to learn how these game boxes are made. And that's kind of my goal for the day, is just to try to get a better handle on materials, try to get a better handle on manufacturing. So I think, interesting, I think the box, oh, I know what's going on. Because I scored and folded outward, the box is actually a little bigger than it should be. I needed to do that sort of V score and fold inward. So this wrap is going to be a little snug on this box. I sort of knew that I was going to have that problem, but I was just kind of hoping, I just sort of hoped that if I ignored the problem, then it wouldn't exist. But that never works, like ever, in art or in life. So I'm gonna come up with a solution. I can use the top template to wrap the bottom of the box, because the top is 1/8 inch bigger. Now this is probably where I'll screw the whole thing up. And I'm wrapping it with the top. Really, really curious how this is going to turn out. It just takes a while to develop a relationship with any material. I think my next box will be better. I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes with this one. All right, moment of truth. It's getting late. So I shook the adhesive more, but I also think I need to burnish each side before I wrap the next, to minimize air pockets. So make sure the outside is fully burnished before I wrap it over. Still not going to be perfect because I'm not a perfectionist by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm just kind of working from the center out to push any potential air bubbles out. Oh yeah, this top went on way better than the bottom. Dang, that's pretty good. There's a little bit of bleed through because this is just really cheap copy paper. But if there was an image printed on here, you wouldn't even see the bleed through. And when this dries, it may be invisible anyway. But this top wrapped really well. The bottom has a few like air pockets, but the solution is I shook the spray adhesive for a couple minutes solid, which the can instructs me to do, but I ignore. So I would say if I had like a glossy print paper, a thin glossy print paper that I could use to print out art, I think I could make a box that's almost indistinguishable quality-wise from this box at this point. If I tried again, I think I could nail it. And so now, we have a medium pro box. There'll be a 40-page rule book. There's actually still plenty of room. This is the original small stout box. And then this is the medium pro box that I'm thinking about going to. This is just a much cleaner fit. I'm digging it. If you hate it, let me know. Maybe you can talk me out of it. But at this exact moment, this is what I'm doing.